Hi everybody, Matt Bernier here in the Daily Racing Form Studios, joined by DRF's national handicapper Mike Watchmaker. We're taking a look at this weekend's Weekend Warrior for Saturday, January the 21st. Two races from the fairgrounds, one from Tampa Bay Downs. Let's start down in Louisiana with race number 7, the $75,000 Louisiana Stakes. Mile and 16th, 4-year-olds and up on the main track. You've got a field of 8 in here, Mike, and the first thing before we dive into who you like, the first thing that's kind of glaring is the lack of early pace in this race.
That's right, Matt, and that's why I went who I went with. But there is a significant lack of pace in this race. In their younger days, Rocket Time and Carve could have taken advantage of the situation, but they've shown that they've kind of lost the positional speed they had earlier in their careers, and which is not an uncommon thing. I mean, a lot of horses who are aging will tend to do that. And it's also coincidental with an overall decline of form. Sort of like they're on the downside of their careers or career arcs. And, you know, you look for other pace horses in this race, and Honorable Duty has been close in some races, but then when you take a closer look, I mean, those the fractions when he was close on or right with the early lead were painfully slow. So he's not particularly quick. Iron Fist, I think, will be involved in the pace here, and I gave him a very, very long look because, I thought he was very good as a 3-year-old in 2015, but I eventually veered away from him because I just didn't like his 4 races last year. I just thought they were decided cut below he did as a 3-year-old, and I just don't know if he's as good as he used to be. And I went with a horse in Seeking the Soul, who's got the inside post. He comes into this off the 2 best races of his career. He's stretching out from extended one-turn races to 2-turn races, and he showed positional speed in those extended one-turn races. And I think, that he could very much take advantage of the lack of speed in this race, and, I hope he's involved in this race right from the get-go.
When we talk about the fairgrounds, you for that long stretch drive. This is a horse pedigree-wise. Distance should be right up his alley, stretching out from that one-turn mile. We talk about a couple other horses we've already touched on. Honorable Duty, he comes out of the Tenacious. There were 2 other horses that exited that race as well. One of them, Dazzling Gem. One of them, Rageb. Dazzling Gem has just been an utter disappointment, and at this point, he's not good enough. Rageb, do you look at him? This is going to be his second start for Tom Amoss. Is he a kind of horse that could move forward, but sort of more importantly, is he going to be compromised by the pace or the lack thereof?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, Rageb could move forward, and he could be completely compromised by the lack of pace. And of all the horses in this race, I think he's one who's extremely vulnerable in that regard because he's a stone cold closer. Where is he going to get the fractions to run at here? I just don't see it happening. Seeking the Soul is a horse I think should stretch out, although, I thought his last 2 races were the best races he ever ran. They were one-turn races. So just because he has the pedigree to stretch out doesn't necessarily mean he will. But, I think the circumstances in this race are absolutely perfect for him to successfully negotiate a mile and a 16th around 2 turns. And I'm really not worried about the length of the fairground stretch. I mean, when you watch races there on video, it seems like the wire never, ever, ever comes, especially when you've, bet deep closers, and they just never seem to get there. But, with the pace set up here, I don't think it matters if this race is run on a straightaway. I mean, there is no pace in here. It should be a very moderate pace, and the horses that are going to be up close are going to have a distinct advantage. The question is, a horse like Iron Fist, he's going to be up close in this race, but is he in any kind of form anymore? I mean, he was on his knees begging to get the job done at 3-5 last time out in what was pretty soft allowance race at Churchill, and this is a tougher band of horses.
You can make the same argument for the last horse we'll talk about really quickly. That's the 4 Carve, where Carve has races in his past anyway that make him certainly a contender in here. He at one point had that sort of tactical speed, but at 7 years old, it's been a long time between drinks. Is there any way that you could look at this horse and say maybe he somehow sort of turns back the hands of time?
Well, he's 7, like you said, Matt, and he's had 29 career starts, which in itself isn't a tremendous amount of racing for a 7-year-old, but he's put a lot of miles on. I mean, he's traveled to a lot of different racetracks, and his recent races just indicate he's not what he used to be. And the alarming thing is that this is a horse that used to be able to lay up close early, and he just really hasn't done it in any consistent manner in any of his recent races. He'll do it occasionally, but only if the pace is extremely slow. But in those circumstances, back in his younger days, he was right on the lead or right with the lead, and now he can't even get there in slow paces. And I'm looking like in his race 3 starts back. I mean, that was a very slow-paced race, and the best he could lay was 4th or 3rd, a couple of lengths off the lead. And I just don't think that's a winning position in this race. I mean, I want Florent Geroux, who rides Seeking the Soul, just to send this horse. I mean, that's his one job. To my mind, the way this race sets up, he's supposed to go right to the lead, and he's supposed to dare everybody to catch him.
Race 7 at the Fairgrounds Saturday afternoon. A really nice card down in Louisiana. It is the $75,000 Louisiana Stakes. Tactics are going to certainly come into play here in this race simply because of the lack of pace. Mike, you're going to go down to the inside, the one Seeking the Soul, Florent Geroux, and Dallas Stewart. When we come back, we'll take a look at the second of 3 for this weekend's Weekend Warrior. Another race from the Fairgrounds is the Grade 3 LeCompte for the 3-year-olds.